Hello, my name is Doug Leasure, and welcome to another in the series of videos where we are covering training for active planner. And in some of the previous, today we're going to cover the basics of creating plans and plan sheets. Previously, we took a look at the installation, creating a new configuration, and also creating the import scripts to bring in the chart of accounts and balances. And that's where we pick it up today. We have Active Planner up and running. We're in our new configuration. But as you can see, we have no plans, no plan sheets. So let's begin there. Let's create a brand new plan. And as is typical in Active Planner, I can use the file and then choose new and new plan and create a new plan that way. But I do prefer using the smart icons when they're available. So let's use the smart icon to create a new plan. The dialog box that comes up allows us to type in a plan key and description. And again, as is typical in Active Planner, the key is the shorter version of the item we're creating. No spaces are allowed, no special characters. So we will name this FY2011. This will represent the plan for fiscal year 2011 budgeting. The key does allow for the underscore, but that would be the only character we can use to kind of separate the plan key. The description, of course, is much more verbose, and we're allowed to use any characters in the description. So here we'll say that this is the fiscal year 2011 budget. The next thing we need to assign is the administrator, who is going to be responsible for this particular plan. And we can choose from the list of existing users. Anytime I'm not sure, I use the default admin account, which we'll use today. And then the last thing is the plan date. Typically, we set this to the first day of the fiscal year. Our calendar runs from January 1 to December 31st. So for our fiscal year 2011, the first day of the fiscal year will be January 1st, 2011. And then the last thing, we need to assign a budget code. And if we do a lookup using the ellipse, the three dots, we have a budget code available to us. And that code is plan. It's the only one available, so we'll select that. And then the last thing is, do we want to allow the sheets to be checked out by the sheet managers and planners, or do we want to kind of keep it reserved for our use while we're in the development stage? Typically what we do is we leave this unchecked so that we're free to do all of our design, and once we have the plan and plan sheets designed and we're ready to open up, then we'll come back here and we'll just put a check mark here allowing our planners and managers access to the plan sheets. So I'll click OK. And now we've created our initial plan. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and create our first plan sheet. So again, let's use the smart icon. We'll use one to create a new plan sheet. And this brings up a little dialog box allowing us to create a new sheet. So the first thing we're going to create is a plan sheet for our IT department. The IT department is broken into various locations: North America, South America, Asia, corporate, and Europe. We're going to begin with the North America location. So what we're going to do is create a sheet key for our department expense, is the type of sheet we're creating, plan sheet. And the location for North America is location 100. So I'm going to use underscore 100. And the department number for IT is 800, so let's do an underscore 800. Again, you could use a variety of different types of methodologies for displaying your sheet keys and grouping them by location, department, etc. But we'll just use something simple like this for our case. And again, this is the North America IT department. So in the description, we'll go ahead and be a little more verbose and specific. And then we'll go ahead and assign the manager. Now we know that Bill is actually the manager of North America IT. So let's go ahead and assign him as the manager. And we'll click OK, and we've created our plan sheet. Now at this point, we haven't put any kind of content in the plan sheet. We've just created an empty shell for the plan sheet itself, if you will. And so when we double click on it to open it up, the first thing that pops up is a little wizard that gives us an opportunity to automatically create some typical columns. The first thing we need to do is to define the base date. And we want to keep all of our plan sheets tied to the base date that we created when we created the plan. That is, tie everything back to the first day of the fiscal year. And then we'll go next, and we'll choose some columns. We want to go ahead and have it automatically create columns for the prior year actual, the current year budget, and let's go ahead and use the same plan code that we defined when we set up the plan. And lastly, I'm not sure if we're going to need it or not, but let's go ahead and include current year actuals, and let's go ahead and put in a column for the year-to-date totals. We'll click next, and the last thing is what kind of periods we want, quarterly periods or individual periods. In our case, we definitely want to design these as the individual periods. January through December, one for each period. Click next and finish, and now we've created the column structure that we need to support our budgeting. Okay, and so as I mentioned, what we're designing here would be the expense budgets for the IT department in North America. So the next thing we would want to do is go ahead and begin to create the row structure. So the columns we've defined here for each of the periods, prior year actual, and then each of our 12 periods for the current, for the fiscal year 2011 budget, and then the actuals for 2011. Now we need to create the row structure. And what we can do is we can use the row insert dimension range to help us to actually automatically insert a range of accounts. And what we know about the expense is that the expense, the account number for the expenses begin at 6,000. And we said we're creating this for the North American IT department. So that's location 100, department 800. And our product code for this would be 00. And that would be in the from account, from 6,000 for department location 100, department 800. And the through account is where we define the end range. This is a segment by segment ranging. So looking at, first of all, segment 1, the natural account, we want to go from 6,000 to 8,500 to encompass the full range of expenses. The next thing we want to look at would be a from and a through for the second and third segment, that is the location and department. Now we want to design this for just a single location department. So we're going to put in the through for the location 100, 800. So that will limit it to just our North American IT department. And again, 00 for the product designator. And we'll click OK. And we can see that Active Planner automatically inserted the number of rows that it needed for that range of accounts for the expenses. Okay. Within Active Planner, we have the ability to insert rows, to append rows, and I like to again use the smart icons. So if we go to the bottom, we have the opportunity to insert a row. We can append a few rows, insert rows, okay? And in a very similar way, we can delete rows. So we have very easy control over the insertion and deletion of rows. In fact, let me go ahead and here at the top, insert a new row. And under the description, we will type in expenses. This is really our salary and GA expenses, so let's go ahead and use that as our description. So salary, G&A expenses. And maybe we want to bold it too just to make it stand out. Okay. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and look at creating the budget methodology that we want to use for these expenses. And my preference is to always do that on the first 1 or 2 rows, make sure that everything is working correctly, make sure that we define the correct calculations, cell formulas, and cell formatting. Make it look right, and then we can easily apply that to the other rows. So let's start on our first row. And the first thing we want to do is to take a look at the prior year actual. And here's the place that we want to bring in the values, the actual values for last year's accounts for this range of accounts. So what we can do is we can very simply create a calculation for our prior year actual, where we want to simply bring in the net change from our source data, which is our general ledger data, our balances from the general ledger source. And so the group is the prior actual group, and that group contains these 12 columns, one for each period of the fiscal year. Okay, so we have applied the calculation to the entire group, and in fact, if we refresh the calculation for these two periods, we can see that it correctly brings in the balance for regular salaries for January and February. In a similar way, I can refresh the calculations, which is how we retrieve that external data that is external to this plan sheet. And we can see that we can very quickly and easily bring in the balances for IT, North American IT salaries, regular salaries. Okay. So the next thing we would want to look at then would be, now that we have the salaries in here for January through December, we do have a year-to-date total, a column that represents a year-to-date total. And so what we want to do is just use a simple formula here to sum everything in row 2 for our prior year actuals. So much as we would in Excel, it's a sum of O2 through Z2. And now we have a total for our prior year actual. Okay, things are looking pretty good so far. Let's continue on. The next thing we want to look at is the budget. So the presumption is that we are just finishing fiscal year 2010, and we are creating a budget now for fiscal year 2011. Okay, many different ways to address this, but for the sake of what we're doing today, we are going to presume that what we want to do is to take last year's actual, increase it by 3.5%, and use that as our budget, as our future budget. So the way we would accomplish that is to use a simple cell formula. Okay, so looking at equals O2, that is just simply last year's actual for January 2010 actual. Okay, so our goal is to take that and increase it by 3.5%. And so with just some simple math, we can accomplish that by just simply multiplying last year's actual by 1.035, and there we've increased it by 3.5%. Okay. Now we can copy this and paste it to the right in each of the cells. Okay. My preference though is to take advantage of what Active Planner calls the fill command. So let me begin by selecting the first formula that I created, and I'll just use a shift and right arrow to select all of the budgets 1 through 12, and then a Control R will do a fill right. If you prefer the mouse click, we also have the fill right command. And just to note, when you're using fill within Active Planner, we can fill right, left, up, or down, depending on the direction that you need to copy the data. So here we have quickly created a budget methodology for fiscal year 2012 based on last year's actual increase by 3.5%. Okay, let's go ahead and just simply copy our formula for computing the year-to-date, and we'll stick that in our year-to-date for the budget. And while we're on the subject, we do have the actuals. Not sure if we're going to use these or not, but let's go ahead and throw the same formula in there. Okay, one of the things you'll notice in Active Planner, which is different from the way Excel behaves, so let me explain that. We correctly put a formula in BA2 that sums AO through AZ2. However, every one of the cells that it references are blank. That is, it has no numeric values. As a result, Active Planner displays the result as blank. This is a feature for many people. They want their plan sheets to look as clean as possible. I also know from working with many of you that you prefer to display a 0 where we have a formula. And so the trick we often use in Active Planner to do that is we can just simply, in our formula, do a sum, do an equal sign, 0 plus, and then the sum of the range. And the result is that will display 0 even though all of the source cells are blank. So just a little tip there and a trick that you can use. Okay, so things are looking pretty good so far. And what we can do now that we have a calculation to bring in the external data, that is the net change from the GL source for the prior year actual. Let's take that and copy that calculation. So I'm going to use the smart icon to copy the calculation, and then I can apply it to all of these rows by just simply clicking anywhere in the row, and we can do a paste of the calculation. Okay, and next thing we can do, we can simply take the entire, we can take the definition we have created so far, and I'm going to do a shift and then an end. And we're going to copy this down just a couple rows. Again, we just want to test it for more than one row. So I'm going to do a fill down, which is I can right click and use the menu to do a fill down, or I can do a Control D, the shortcut key, to do a fill down. And now if we refresh the calculations on these 3 rows, we have correctly brought in the external values. Interestingly, our hourly salaries and overtime are 0 for the prior year. So you can see that things are defined correctly. Unfortunately, because there were no source dollars there, it's kind of hard to see how things are looking. So that's okay. We'll take care of that here in a moment when we finish the process, and we'll copy this definition to the entire sheet. But first, let's go on and look at a few other small things. You can see that the methodology we're using here allows us to apply a percentage of 3.5% to last year's actual. I know that typically folks don't like to budget this way. Not that there's anything wrong with this methodology, but the problem is every row is going to receive 3.5%, and there's no way to change our to identify our salaries as getting maybe 2% and our health insurance 7%. And so one of the tricks we often use is to give us the ability to row by row define what that increase percentage would be. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to look at inserting a new column. And so let's go here to one of our smart icons for the column manager. And here we can see listed all of our existing columns that we've created. And again, we use the wizard to create these ones. And they're listed in order, top to bottom, which would represent our order left to right on the screen. And you can see here that we have the ability to take any one of our columns and move it up or down on the screen, which would move it left to right in the plan sheet. Now what we want to do is we actually want to insert a new column. So we're going to use the button to do an insert. And again, as we do in most things in Active Planner, we're going to create a key and a description. So our goal of this column is to represent the increase percentage, what we want to increase the budget by a particular percentage. So for the column key, let's use increase as the column key, and in the description we'll say increase, and here we're allowed to use all the special characters. So we'll say increase and put the percent sign. Okay, and so this we can assign the column key to a particular group, but in this case it doesn't need to be part of any group, so we'll leave it set to none, meaning it's not part of any of the currently defined groups. And we will set the period to be relative 0 through relative 0. And what this does is it just simply connects the period information back to our overall plan date. Our plan date is January 1st, which is the first period in the fiscal year. And so by setting it to relative 0, 0, that means relatively it is the first period, because that's what the plan is, plus 0 more additional periods. So if you think of it in those terms, it's whatever the plan date period is, plus 0 additional periods. The last thing we need to look at is the definition of what is going to show up on these titles, on the title row. So down here where it says column title, this is where we have the opportunity to change what is being displayed in the title for this column. And so by default, a new column group has the period end date and the column number displayed as an alphabet of the O, P, Q, R, etc. Okay, in our case, we want to also display something that would identify this as the increase column. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go here and we're going to hit the Enter key to insert a new row. And we're going to say that we want to use whatever we've typed here in the column description as the first item that displays on our row. The next thing is we have a date here that would display a period end date, and you can see that that's actually how all of these columns have been defined, displaying the date of the period end date. For our column, that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's change it, and let's display the year of our period end date. So this would be 2011. And just to take it a small step further, let's put the letter F and Y in front of that, and a dash, a minus sign, so that it will look like that this would look like the fiscal year 2011. And if we click OK, we can see that it inserted the column, and we can see clearly from the column title we created that it said an increased percent for fiscal year 2011. Okay, now that we've inserted the column, now we can begin to use this column. The first thing we would want to look at would be the formatting on this particular column. So I'm going to use the smart icon for cell format. Okay, and so by default, Active Planner sets the format to a numeric with 0 decimal places. We want to use this particular column as a percentage, so let's choose percentage for percent, and we'll go ahead and choose 2 decimal places for the formatting here. And so now you can see if I enter 3.5, it displays what I'm entering is 3.5%, and that's what displays here in the column. Okay, the next thing we want to do now that we've entered 3.5% is let's go over to our calculation where we are computing our future year budget. And instead of multiplying by 3.5% where we've hard-coded that, what we want to do is we want to use what's in cell O2. Okay, P2 are our prior year actual for January multiplied by whatever is in cell O2, which is our percentage. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to multiply not by the 3.5%, but actually we need to take 1 plus whatever percentage you've typed in the increase column. And so 1 plus O2 would result in multiplying by 1.035. And that is an increase of 3.5%. Okay. Now our intent is to take this and copy it to the right. As we copy it to column AD, AE, etc., I do not want column O to change. That is, column O always represents the increase percent. So much as we would in Excel, I need to put a $ in front of the column designator so that when I copy this from from January to February, okay, the source changes from January to February, but my percent always is locked at column O. Okay, so now you can see if we change our mind and put in 3.75%, that our budget changes to be an increase of 3.75%. Okay, and now once again we can easily apply this to the entire fiscal year using the Control R to fill right. And so now we have modified the formula for computing our next year fiscal budget. So the last thing we want to do is go ahead and take a look at the cell formatting on the increase column again. And the reason we do that is as we look at the plan sheet, what we can see is that the values in these columns are going to come in from a calculation, bringing in the external values from our net change source. In a similar way, the totaling column, okay, is computed using a simple solve formula to sum January through February. And we're using solve formulas to compute next year's budget. Likewise, we've created a year-to-date sum. All of these things should not be modified by the department manager. Instead, we want the department manager to manage his budget by just simply typing in the correct percentages that he would want to apply to each row. And so what we often do in Active Planner is to lock down or to protect the cells that we do not want the department manager changing. The easiest way to do that in Active Planner is just simply to select the entire sheet, and we'll go to our cell format, protection, and we'll put a check mark there to lock the entire plan sheet. Having locked everything, now we need to think about the converse, which is, so which cell or cells would we want the department manager to modify? And the answer is just these cells where he's going to type in the increase percent. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll select that cell, and we will change the protection to be unprotected. And then while we're here, I prefer to do something that would to set a background color, typically turquoise or yellow. And we use that as a methodology of saying, look, when you as the department manager open this plan sheet and you're ready to do your budgeting, all you need to do is find the yellow cells and change the values in those yellow cells. So this is just a simple way where we can clearly identify what things the department manager would need to change in order to complete his or her budget. Okay? And then likewise, we probably want to set it to a default of 0% just as a starting point. And that would give them the just a ability to set it to 0, and they can just simply type in the values wherever they want to change it from 0. Okay. Let's see what so the next step we probably want to do is go ahead and take everything we've done so far and apply it to all of our budget rows. And so we will do a shift end, and we will fill everything down to all of our rows. Okay. And once again, once we recalculate the plan sheet, now we are bringing in the balances for the prior year actual, and we are computing next year's budget based on whatever value we enter in the increase column. Okay, a couple more small things. Inside of Active Planner, we have the type column. It can be set to budget. Typically, we would set it to budget or nothing. And what this is used for is simply the methodology we use inside of Active Planner to say that this row is what we are using to compute the budget values that we would want to move back to the general ledger. Okay, and so you can see that for each of our accounts, from the 6,000 to the 8,500, each of these accounts are marked as budget because this is where we are computing our budget for the next fiscal year. The last thing is we often would want to put a total row here. Okay, so in the description, we're just going to type total, and now we would want to create a total for each of our period information. So for our prior year actual one, that is January, and for our account 6000-8500, we would want to go ahead and create a total. So I'm going to select those items and use the smart icon here that allows us to easily create a sum formula. Okay, so it quickly and easily is doing a sum of P2 through P18. Yeah, you could have typed that in yourself. It's easy enough to create, but I just wanted to show you we have a smart icon to aid you in creating that. And then if we do a shift end and a fill right, we can take that cell formula and fill it to the right. So now we have a total for every column. Okay, and again the description here on the first row, as well as our total, is not marked as budget, because this row, though it's useful information, okay, this is not a row that represents the budget amount that needs to be pushed back to the general ledger, because we would push the detailed budgets back to the general ledger. Never a total or values from a roll-up sheet, just the individual detail budgets. Okay. So one more thing we might want to look at as a final step is to think about this sheet in terms of what Bill, the department manager, is going to do with the sheet. He's going to enter his increase by row, and he may want to make some notes about those particular row-by-row increases that he's making. Now, we previously locked the entire plan sheet, every cell, every column, so that would include locking the note column. And so, since we want Bill to make notes about the various increases he's entering here on the sheet, let's go ahead and select the note column, and then we will unlock that using the cell format protection, and we'll just clear the check mark for lock, so that as he's making entries here, he's free to use the note to define why the overtime is being increased. So overtime will be same as last year, or whatever note you might want to make. The note is a way for the budget manager, department manager, to make notes about what he's doing, why he's doing it, and there will be a date and a time stamp. So this would have Bill's name here when he makes a note entry, and a date and time stamp as to when he made that entry. Okay. And the last thing is we may want to hide some of the information here. Bill does not care about which of these items are noted or marked as type. And so let's take a quick look at this view option, and let's hide some of the items. So we know that Bill doesn't care about the type. Bill doesn't care about the flow or the calculation that we've defined. And right now we are not using the actuals for 2011, so let's go ahead and hide those as well, both the individual 12 periods as well as the totaling column. And let's take a look at what we have now. So we have the account, the description, the note field, his increase percentage, prior year actual, current year budget as we've computed it, and the totals. Okay, so this is looking pretty good, with the exception that as I scroll to the right, I no longer see the account numbers. So let's take a look at the ability to freeze our first set of columns. So if I go to the sheet options, the very first item we see here would be frozen columns. So here we have the ability to freeze the first 3 columns. So I'm just going to set that to 3. And now as we scroll to the right, we can see that the first 3 columns are frozen. That is, we can keep an eye on which columns, which account numbers we're looking at and what their specific resulting values are. Okay. And let's go ahead and save this plan sheet. And we have now successfully created the plan sheet for Bill, who is the manager of the North America IT department. Okay, so having done this, we have created a plan. We've created a plan sheet for North America IT to do their budgeting. And now let's take a quick look at what we need to do to take this particular plan sheet and make copies of it for the other IT locations for South America, Europe, Asia, corporate, etc. All right, so what we want to do is using this as our starting point, we're going to open this plan sheet. We're going to go to the main tab, and this is where initially we created the plan sheet for North America IT. What we want to do now is we want to modify this, okay, for South America. And so South America is location 200, so let me change the key so that the location is 200. And now let's change the description so that it is now South America. And let's change the manager. Bill manages North America, but Bob manages South America. So we'll change the key, description, and manager, and we're going to save the sheet. And so Active Planner gives us a little dialog box saying, hey, I see that you changed the key for this item. Are you intending to overwrite or to update that item, or are you intending to insert a new item, a new record, is the way Active Planner describes that. And so we want to leave Department 100, 800 out there and insert a new one. So we're going to use the Insert New Record. And that effectively, let me show you what that does here, is that leaves Department 100 out there and creates a new Department 200. Okay, now we have a new sheet. Let's take a look at the plan sheet, and you see, of course, it is still designed and designated for location 100. So all we need to do is simply come here to the edit, and what we can do is we can do a find, not a find, but a replace accounts. So this is the way we can very easily take our existing accounts and replace the 100 with 200. Okay, and so in Active Planner, what we do is we use masking to say, look, I don't care what the first segment is, but where you find 100 in the second segment, I want to replace that, and I don't care what's in the third or fourth segment. So in the find mask, we're ignoring effectively first, third, and fourth segments, and we are simply focusing on segment 2 equal to 100. In the replace, we do a similar thing where we don't care what's in the first segment, but I do care about the second segment where you find 100, replace it with 200. Likewise, I don't care what's in the third and fourth segment. And we want to do this across the entire plan sheet. So if we click the Replace All, we can see that we very quickly and easily change this from location 100 to location 200. And now if we refresh the calculation for the entire plan sheet, now we are actually bringing in prior year actuals for South America IT. And now this sheet is prepared for Bob to come in and do his budgeting. So we'll save that. And now let's do it one more time for Europe. So let's go here and change again the department, or I'm sorry, the location should be 300, which is the location for Europe. We'll change the description, and we'll change the manager. And Denise is actually the one who manages Europe. So we'll change that, and we will save it, insert a new record, come here to the plan sheet, edit. We're going to replace the accounts. Okay, so this will be replacing 200. And we will replace that with 300. Okay, so segment 2, where it equals 200, now replace it with 300. Do a replace all. Calculate our net change for the prior year. So we'll refresh the calculations. And so now this will give us a great starting point as we bring in for Europe IT, we bring in the net change for the prior fiscal year. Save that. And now we can take our IT department for North America, South America, Europe. And when you create new plan sheets, they always go here under the unassigned node, because we're not sure where they should reside positionally on the plan tree. And so let's go ahead and just take, I guess we can't move them now. We don't have any further structure here. But we can, once we flesh out the rest of the tree-like structure, we can drag these into place. For now, we'll just leave them here under the unassigned. But you can see how we can quickly and easily create a plan sheet and then modify that plan sheet for the other locations, other departments, etc. So very quickly and easily we've created a brand new plan and plan sheets to reside within that plan to accomplish the particular type and methodology of budgeting that we want to do for our department expense. Okay, well, that's everything we wanted to cover today. Thank you very much.